Hey folks, John Boym here of the Let's Talk Beef podcast, coming at you from a snowy Minnesota right now. And just want to say sorry for the long pause there, but things just kind of got hectic here for a little while and had to figure out a bunch of things. And so we kind of had to put the podcast on the back burner for a bit. But now I got some time again and hoping to continue going again and get this thing rolling. So I've got a bunch of interviews lined up here for the next few weeks so I can keep things going and rocking and rolling. So thanks for your patience, and I hope you enjoy what we got coming up next. But this week, I sat down with a friend of mine, Cody Nelson, of Bar End Cattle. They do a bunch of shorthorn stuff up there in central Minnesota. And Cody also does a couple other things. He's got a soil health consulting business called Soil RX. And him and his wife just recently bought a tree farm. So they do a bunch of tree removal and moving stuff like that with trees, and Christmas trees is part of their operation too. So he talks about it all in the podcast, and it's quite interesting how he never thought he'd buy a tree farm as a way to actually be able to run more cattle. So he'll learn all about that there. But before we get to the episode quick, I got to thank my sponsor this week, as it is B&L Ag Inc. of Clear Lake, South Dakota. B&L Ag is a family-owned and independently operated seed company that was started in 2017 by Brent Krause. Brent has spent his whole life farming with his family and has put the farmer and the rancher first. B&L Ag has you covered from corn, soybeans, and forage crops to small grains, cover crops, and even those wildlife mixes. So for any of your seed needs, check out blaginc.com or give Brent a call at 605-956-1389. And for the next 30 days, when you call Brent and you tell him that you heard about him on the Let's Talk Beef podcast, you'll get 5% off your next order. That's pretty nice of you, Brent. And so I'd like to say thanks to Brent and B&L Ag Inc. For sponsoring this episode, and hope you give them a call for all of your 2021 seed needs. And so thanks, Brent. And here's Cody Nelson. Do enjoy. We'll see you soon, guys. Thanks. So we are in Bellevue, Minnesota, the Iverson Tree Farm. And we'll get to that later. But I'm here with Cody Nelson. Sitting down this morning. He got me up bright-eyed, and we're going to talk some beef this morning.
How's it going this morning?
Good. Great. How about you?
Excellent.
Good.
Excellent.
So we're just going to get a little intro to you, kind of how you got started in the beef industry, and then we'll get to the tree industry, obviously.
Yeah.
But just kind of, where are you from? Where did you grow up? How did the cattle thing start for you? And kind of how we've progressed to get to where we are now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start back way before I was born, I guess. Back in 1965, my dad purchased his first shorthorn heifer. And so I grew up in the shorthorn industry. Mm-hmm. We went, had some ebbs and flows, and lots of changes happened along the way. At that time, my dad was farming with his dad, ended up taking it over. Well, he quit farming in the 80s. Yep. Along with several other farms. But he never sold the cows. So the cows have always been a mainstay. Yep. He just quit with the row crops. He actually went back to school, ended up getting a job with the state of Minnesota as a dairy inspector. But like I say, the whole time maintained his cow herd. Yep. So I grew up as a hobby cow-calf producer. Okay. A son of a hobby cow-calf producer.
There you go. Roughly how many cows?
So I remember being down to 4 cows at one point in time. Okay. But I remember I would say we averaged about 30 to 40. Okay. And at our peak, like when I was in high school and starting to build things up, we were at up to 60 cows. Yeah. I thought that was a big deal back at the time. Mm-hmm. Now since then, a lot of things have changed. We've had up to 350 cows. We've been down to 25 cows, and but we've had a few partnerships along the way. So I actually went to college down in Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for beef production.
Quickly, just going back for this. Yep. How did you get into shorthorn?
So it's interesting. At that time, shorthorns were still pretty big. Yeah. But he was in an area up in Hoffman, that's where our hometown is, and was surrounded by Herefords. And I guess he always told me he wasn't sure he could compete with the old-time Hereford breeders that were in the area.
Uh-huh.
And he knew of some pretty good shorthorn breeders. Now I can't remember where he got his first shorthorn at, but that's a question I need to ask him.
Yeah.
But he thought he could kind of get into the shorthorn deal and compete. Now, it started out as a 4-H project, you know.
Most do.
Yeah, and that's how mine went, and we've continued to grow it.
Yeah.
So anyways, after, and that's what I did. I mean, I showed cattle. My dad always said we show our breeding cattle. We don't raise show cattle. Or we show our breeding cattle. We don't breed show cattle.
Gotcha.
So that's what we did. Did we win everything? No. Did we win some? Yes. Were you doing the junior national thing? We were doing some junior national stuff. We did a lot of state stuff.
Okay.
We won the state fair once. We had reserve a couple times in the open class shows and 4-H shows and FFA shows. You know, so
you're
funny.
hitting it pretty hard.
Yeah. So we did a lot of that. And Minnesota, in far as the shorthorn deal is concerned, has one of the largest breed associations.
Really?
The Shorthorn Show is one of the larger breed shows at the Minnesota State Fair.
Okay.
Usually well over 100 head in that, and then grew up going to junior nationals, and then going to we didn't participate in like Denver and Louisville and those big majors, but I would always go and help other people stay very connected in that. So learned about that, and then went to school, like I was saying, down in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for beef production.
Yep.
All I wanted to do was beef cows. That's all I cared about.
Yep.
So we, at that time, I was still buying cows and sending cows back up to Dad to take care of, and I think a lot of people probably know how that goes.
For sure. Yeah.
So with just trying to build the herd as much, and being down in Iowa, like that was at the time a haven for shorthorns. Like everybody. There was a lot of stuff going on at that time. And then shortly after college, I actually took a job with Cyclone Trace Cattle Company.
Okay.
Who John Hagee, the owner of Hagee Manufacturing, Hagee Sprayers for a lot of people, he had a small shorthorn herd. And I say small. I think when I got there was 40 cows. I was one of his tax write-offs, I would say. But he was an awesome guy.
Yep.
Great for the shorthorn breed. Different than how I am now. He was really focused on raising show cattle.
Yep.
But it was a very good experience. Learned a lot. So we kind of grew that, and then the next group took it on, and they had a lot. I mean, they were winning national champions they had national championships, and they were doing really, really well in the show thing. And I just never had that. I always wanted to make the best herd of cows in the breed. I didn't care so much about the green chips in Louisville or anything like that. So
how long were you there?
About 2 years.
2 years.
And I would have been there for a lot longer. But I was offered an opportunity to work for the Shorthorn Association.
Oh, wow.
So growing up in that breed, when you got an opportunity to be a breed rep, I always looked up to those guys, the guys with the starched jeans and the cowboy hats.
Yeah.
I always thought that'd be a cool deal, and it was. I got paid to drive around and look at shorthorn cows, and I literally got paid to drive all over the country, and
it's tough to pass that up.
It was very tough to pass that up, and so that's what I did. And I mean, I've looked at cows in most states, and and several Canadian provinces. I know where there's a lot of honey holes that nobody knows about in terms of really good cows, and I've been on some of the biggest, most well-known shorthorn operations in the country. So, and kind of seen a lot of things and been able to take things from the secret ones to the best ones,
Yeah.
And
you got a lot of perspective.
Yeah. So that was really good with that. But then once I started having kids, you probably didn't want to spend as much time on the road. So that got me back home.
So how long were you at the association?
I was at the association for a little over 2 years as well. They told me when I took that job that was a 2 to 5 year job. Like it'll bounce you into something bigger and better.
Yeah.
You'll get burnt out,
Yep.
That's exactly what happened. I know the one year I put 100,000 miles. The second year I put 100,000 miles on my car. That's not including airline miles and rental cars and everything else.
Yep.
So it was just
your car.
I think I was home 21 nights.
Wow.
So, but it was fun. I mean, it was.
You're young and.
It was a blast. I learned a lot, met a lot of people, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yep. But you're ready to be done too.
Yeah, I've got so many stories and made so many friends from that it was worth every second of it. Would I have done some things different? Sure. Sometimes I wish I'd have stayed there. I think I could have made a bigger impact.
Yep.
But all in all.
Were you living in Minnesota?
Well, kind of. Yeah. We were based out of Omaha, okay. But I didn't have a home there because there was no reason. I really didn't have a home.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of rented a house. I rented a room at a buddy's house in the basement.
Yeah.
And I had a bed there, and an office, which I didn't hardly spend any time in.
Yep.
I did probably spend more time in the Omaha office, I would say, than I did at that home office, but it was there in case I needed it.
Yep.
I tried moving back home for about a week and realized that wasn't going to work. So, no early 20-year-old or early anybody in their early 20s needs to move back home. I don't know how these kids do it now, but
it's different now.
Yeah. So anyways, that kind of led that. When I came back home, I was actually working for a small feed organization, feed company, and was also building a cow-calf operation with a couple buddies of mine. And we had we were farming just under 1,000 acres. And then at the peak, we were up to 350 cows. We were growing. That was JDMC Cattle Company is what we called it. And trying to be primarily shorthorns. We did some embryo work for some other people, so we were putting in a lot of embryos in recip cows. That's a really good opportunity, I think, for people with there's a lot of potential in that game.
Yep.
Especially as we look into different aspects of the cattle industry and what we can do and what we can't or maybe shouldn't. Mm-hmm. There's always issues with that. You got to look at genetics you're bringing into your cow herd.
Yep.
So anyways, we tried that just like most partnerships.
How did the partnership start? Like
probably I'm guessing it started over a couple whiskeys one night. We were sitting around. Let's see, I don't remember exactly how it happened, how it started. I know. So there was two brothers. So the J and the M was Jeff and Mike, and then there was Doug, who's a neighbor. We all grew up together.
Okay.
So you've known each other for a long time.
Yeah. So like Jeff and Mike, we always had their family and my family had Thanksgiving together and holidays together. And once we moved down to Renville from Hoffman, after my dad took the job with the state of Minnesota, we got a farm place down here, sold the old farm, and we didn't really know a whole lot of people, but somehow we got connected with those guys.
Yep.
And became very, very close family friends.
Yep.
And then Doug, his family, Doug had lost his dad, but Doug's dad and Mike and Jeff's dad were close at the time prior to that. Okay. So they were close family friends.
Yep.
And Doug just lived a quarter mile from where I grew up.
Okay.
So we were just a big circle. Now, they were all older than me. I was the young pup,
Yep.
But I was the one with experience in the purebred cattle business.
Yep.
And all I ever wanted to do was farm and run cows. I mean, mostly cows, but I did want to farm too. And they had land, some of their family ground, not a lot, but between the two of them, they had a decent amount of land. How it started was we were all going to keep our full-time jobs. There was going to be 4 of us, and we were going to do this on the side, but we thought 4 quarters kind of could, if we were all, say we all run 25 cows by ourselves, we could do 50 or do 100 and actually be somebody, you know. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
And then I kept finding cows and finding groups, and we kept buying stuff, and we kept growing. And next thing you know, well, along the way, we lost one of the partners that just didn't want to be part of it, which was fine. That happens.
Yeah.
And then I think I was the first one that came to the farm full time. And then we had another one come in. We brought in a seed dealership, and
Yeah.
we had lots of stuff go on.
Find all that
Yeah.
to do
So
stuff.
yeah, it was just like, well, if we buy it, we could just as well sell it, So that's kind of we got spread pretty thin,
Yeah.
and we were trying to be bigger than we actually were,
Yeah.
and trying to do a little bit of everything instead of, what's the saying? We were kind of a jack of all trades, master of none at that point in time, and as we progress into some of the stuff that's happened over the last year, I think we're going to see that is easy to let happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to stay focused on what your main goals are and push forward, and not try and just because you use it doesn't mean you need to sell it type of deal. Try and focus on a few of the good things that you're really good at, and go with that. So anyways, that got us further on. We did that, I think it was 4 years, and then we wanted to not kill each other. so
I'm sure a lot of people know that feeling.
yeah. So I mean, I think anybody who's had a partnership with friends or family, even, we kind of wanted to put our friendship first, and know that was not gonna last if we continued.
Yeah.
So there's not one person to blame. We're all to blame for different things. I'm sure of that, in terms of why it didn't work.
Yeah.
But there again, I wouldn't change that for the world. Would I have done a few things differently? For sure.
Yeah.
But sure glad for the opportunity to do what we did.
Yeah.
We raised some cattle that are still being used today very heavily. I'd like to think we influenced the shorthorn breed, and how they're starting to jump back into the commercial industry more and more every year.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, had to do with some of the cattle that we produced. So,
yeah. So you guys are all still good?
Yeah, we're good friends. I talk with one of them probably more than the others, but I don't think any one of us holds a grudge against the other.
That's good.
Just happens to be one of them. Our two operations now still fit hand in hand, and we used a lot of the same genetics, and he doesn't have as many cows as we do, but we still help each other out along the way. And if he needs to, if he needs a bull, or I need a bull, or we need, sometimes you got small groups, and we'll just say, Doug, just take them,
Yep.
or whatever, and he does the same. So his son comes down and helps every now and then, and so that's a good deal. So everybody's good.
That's good.
And that's a good feeling, knowing that there's we didn't create any enemies there.
Yeah,
Say that.
That's the goal, I think, mostly.
Yep. So from there, we took out a group of cows from that partnership when we split things up, and that's been the base to our cattle operation, which is called Bar End Cattle Company.
And that's just you?
That's just me and my wife and my kids.
Gotcha.
Bar End Cattle Company, not barn. I'd have done that different now. It should have been N bar or something like that, but I think there is an N bar cattle. So, so anyways, there again, we got down to 25 cows. I took more than that out. We sold the group off, trying to get out of some debt, clean things up a little bit.
Yep.
We went through the whole Dave Ramsey movement, and got 100% debt free, and which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I started to realize how business worked, and thought, man, we got to get back into debt.
Yeah.
So we did that. We've done both of them a couple times probably.
So Dave doesn't work on all levels of life?
He does not work on all levels of life, although we still use a lot of his stuff that he talks about. And I think for the everyday person that works 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever.
Yep.
I think for those people, I think Dave Ramsey is huge, and everybody should listen to him. The second you start to own your own business, though, things change a little bit.
Yeah.
So we try and run our personal finance just like he would recommend.
Yep.
We don't try to run our businesses just like that, but we do still use bits and pieces of it.
There's
you
principles
know.
there.
Yeah. So then we got into listening to like Robert Kiyosaki, for instance. He's the one that wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
You know. So started paying attention to that and using debt properly, not using debt to go buy a pickup truck, but using debt to maybe buy businesses or to buy thing. And in our business, a cow is a business, right?
Yeah.
A single cow could be a business. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with using debt as long as it's on purchasing an asset.
Yeah.
So started listening to several of those other, I'll call them influencers,
Yep.
And kind of changed how we were going to do it. And I kept looking at this as we split up our partnership, and we went from a high, what I thought was a high in my lifetime, to almost a low of back to where I was in high school of having 25 cows, thinking, what are we doing? And then I was actually, one thing that we did that really got me excited was early on I had a neighbor come over, and I call him a neighbor, he's 25 miles away, but we actually ran into each other at a farm sale, and he said, hey, you guys grow some oats, right? Which we did. We always planted oats. Why does every cattleman plant oats? For straw and maybe a little feed. And he just made the comment, he said, why don't you plant turnips after that? And I thought, well, why would I? We don't have time to grow anything after we combine a small grain, and we're in Minnesota. That ain't going to work. And he said, just try it. So, and maybe it wasn't turnips. Maybe it was just a cover crop, is what he called it.
Yeah.
So we actually
But he planted that seed.
He planted that seed.
It's a pretty good pun right there.
Yeah, and that is where it all started.
Yeah.
So, 2008, I think, was the first cover crop I planted.
Okay.
We will talk a lot more about cover crops.
I know.
So what happened? I'll never forget. We had chopped some oats, and then we waited till we combined the rest of them. We disked the field. I think I disked it once, and then I ran a field cultivator across it again just to level it out, because that's what we did.
So you did.
And then went back out with I don't remember what number drill. It was a Case, an old red drill.
Yep.
10-footer.
Yeah, I think we have one.
Yeah, pulled behind the 30-20 and arrow front, and I had just put some oats and wheat out there. I had that in the drill, or I had some oats and wheat in the shed, leftover seed.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think some of the oats were what we combined. Pretty sure it was, because I remember trying to unplug that thing, telling myself I'd never ever do this again because they were not cleaned. Folks always use cleaned oats.
Yeah.
Buy seed. And we're not selling seed anymore. But so I did that. I had 3 farmers stopping their pickups. I could see them driving. You start planting anything in August, people drive slow.
Yep.
And that started to change a little bit, but especially then. Well, I had 3 different guys. 2 of them are brothers that don't farm together, but they all stopped, and I'd get to the end. I'd get out and talk to them. That took longer to talk to them than it did to plant the 13 acres or whatever we planted.
What are you doing?
Yeah, you can't plant anything. They all said the same thing. We're in Minnesota, right? You can't plant anything in August. Like, that'll never work. Mm-hmm. And now I just look at all the stuff. If I could plant things in August, we grow all kinds of stuff. But anyways, we didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
And anyway, so, planted it, got a shot of rain, and next thing I know, they're waist high. The oats and wheat were waist high, probably mid-October.
Yeah.
And one of my partners was just freaking out, like, what are we going to do with all that crap out there, And I'm like, we're going to graze it and throw a fence around it. So that's what I did. I threw a fence around it, brought a whole bunch of cows home, And it proceeded to rain for a week, and the cows laid 100% of it flat. And there I had cows home, and I was feeding them. And I just thought...
You just turned them out on all...
I just turned it out. I fenced the whole thing, which wasn't a bunch. But, I mean, like I say, it was 13 acres or something.
You just threw them out on 13 acres.
Yeah, let them have the whole deal. And, we had other crop ground in between. So as we got that combine, we just kind of opened up the rest of it, if I remember right. But it was a waste. So I thought. So I ran into him again at some winter deal or something, that same neighbor.
Yep.
And he said, "Did you try it? Did you do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. It's a complete waste of time." He's like, "Well, what happened?" So I told him, I said, "Well, I planted it. It grew up tall. We turned cows in." And I said, "It rained for a week. Remember that week in October it rained?" And which seems like it happens every year.
Yeah.
And everything was laid flat. He's like, "Well, you idiot. You shouldn't have let them have the whole thing." And I was like, shoot. My dad's rotational graze since I can remember.
Yeah.
I should have known better than that.
Yep.
And then he said, plus, you got to put turnips in with it. You can't just do oats and wheat.
Yeah.
So the next year, we did about the same. I think it was maybe 20 acres or something, but different piece of ground. But I planted oats. What did we do? Oats, peas, radishes, and turnips.
Okay.
And I had the numbers figured out. We grazed. I figured out if I would in that particular year I would have had to feed cows if I couldn't have grazed that cover crop. I strip grazed it, and we harvested as a grazable forage $460 an acre worth of feed off of there.
Wow.
And now I'm hooked. And I'll never forget this, because one of my partners, the same one that was wondering what we're going to do with all this stuff, he's like, "Wow, that's fine, but we'll see how bad the crops are going to be next year."
Yeah.
I was like, "I agree. Why wouldn't you?"
Yeah.
You thought, well, we just grew all this feed up. We just run all these cows on this ground. We just grazed it all. At the time, evidently, I thought the cows walked across the fence and left their manure somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But now we know that those nutrients didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they cycled through the cow, and they're in a better form than they were in the first place.
Yep.
So the next year, we had the best beans. On the poorest ground we had the best beans we'd ever had. By a long shot. And to the point we were thinking the monitor was broke.
Yeah.
And
so now your mind's racing.
Mine is.
Yeah.
And one of the partners is like, "Well, it won't happen again." Well, maybe that's the divide of why our partnership divided. But it'd just be a small reason. But I mean, I wanted to, I started asking all kinds of questions. Why do we till our corn stalks?
Yeah.
That was one of my biggest things. And we argued about that every single fall.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Let's feed. Let's let the cows turn it into something. Oh, you gotta plow her black. You gotta dig her up. You'll never grow a crop if you don't plow it black. And I'm not saying any of my partners, just people in general are saying that,
Yeah.
And they still say it today. And it's really sad because we don't have to. Mm-hmm. And so I brought that point up to get back to after we split the partnership up, and I was down to not a bunch of cows anymore and not sure what direction we were going to go. I got a call from Pennsylvania, and we had been buying some seed from Cover Crop Solutions, and Conrad called, and somehow we got talking about my situation. He's like, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so, but I kind of needed one." Mm-hmm. But I mean, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I was trying to figure out how we could just kind of get things going again, So he sent me down to the Farm Progress Show to meet with the national sales manager of Cover Crop Solutions at the time, which they're not in business anymore. But I went down there, kind of interviewed. You know, one of them interviews that you don't really know if you even care about the job, but you drive down there, you're not sure what you're doing the whole way there, and about a week later, they flew me and my wife out to Pennsylvania, and we went out there and talked to them and looked over stuff, and they were talking in a language that I hadn't heard before, in terms of soil health and cover crops and some of that stuff. And I mean, I had been doing a lot of research on it, but like these guys were for real.
Pennsylvania, like they don't do any. Rarely do they do tillage.
No, a lot less than they used to. Yeah.
I mean, I was out there doing a podcast. When was that? It was last July. I mean, and like the friend of mine lived out there, so we stayed at their place, and like he knew of like one guy that did tillage in the fall. Like, everything else was. That'd
be about right, and probably an organic guy. You know.
Probably.
I mean, I don't know very. When I went out there, I only worked on a few little farms or close to where the headquarters were.
Like nobody did any tillage. It's just like
the best time. Mindset. Yeah, the best time to drive through Pennsylvania and see some of that is in between crops. So after harvest and before planting. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what time. It could be October. It could be March. Mm-hmm. Any time in between there, I'll just about guarantee it's green. I mean, almost all winter.
Yeah.
You know, they don't get the continuous snowfall we get in or snow cover and freeze up. I mean, I got a couple fields here too that are green underneath the snow.
Yep.
I know we could go pull the snow back. You'll see it's green.
Yep.
There it's just green. Like if you're not there while it's snowing, the ground is green almost everywhere. It's amazing. And we could easily do very similar things here. So, which, you know what, maybe at some point in time we need to, but yeah, so that's how that kind of deal started. I took the job with them. I was there, I don't even remember what my title was, Midwest sales manager or something like the territory manager, DSM, whatever, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Once again, I was getting paid to run around and learn.
That's the best.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I was helping people out along the way, but they were set up where they had distributors, and then those distributors had dealers, and almost every elevator and co-op throughout the Midwest in a roundabout way was a dealer for Cover Crop Solutions through one of their distributors, because they kind of had all the distributors locked up.
Okay.
You know, your certain main, like, grass and cover crop companies, you know what I mean? They had all them, and then they sold back, you know, into all these co-ops. So it was easy in terms of being able to stop and say, hey, you know, I'm with Cover Crop Solutions, and they're like, well, we don't get stuff through you. And it's like, well, there are catalogs right there on your desk, you know.
Yeah.
They just didn't know,
yeah.
You know, but they knew they sold for whatever our distributor was, you know. So anyways, get to run around, do that, work with people, help people out.
So Midwest, like where were you?
So we had another guy in Illinois. I covered a lot of Iowa, Minnesota, Dakotas, Nebraska. We kind of split Wisconsin.
Okay.
We had a major distributor that had several locations throughout Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota. So, and then we had another distributor in Iowa that did a lot of stuff in Wisconsin as well. A lot of those distributors overlapped.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily have territories. So we kind of worked together and saying, hey, you go take this area.
Yeah.
I'll take the other area. And at that time, we weren't getting called. I mean, maybe our distributors would call us from time to time, but like if we wanted to increase sales, we had to go get it.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking. I mean, there was the farm magazines were just starting to talk covers. You know, now you can't open up anything without hearing something about cover crop, soil health, regenerative ag, sustainable ag, you name it, grazing, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. So that was just an interesting time where like you were wanted. Once they understood they wanted you, but they didn't know they wanted you beforehand, you know? So, it was definitely different. But that company was growing so fast at that time.
This is Cover Crop Solutions.
Cover Crop Solutions, okay. The home of the tillage radish. Everybody knows of the tillage radish. They bred Steve Groff and Dr. Ray Weil bred the tillage radish for a singulated taproot. Had 260 pounds PSI. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of things that was good at, but anyways, they were kind of going through growing pains. Actually, while I was brought in there, I didn't realize this, but they'd overproduced and they just needed to sell seed. You know, they were doubling in sales every year for the first several years, which is fine in any business. Early on, double's a great number, but I think any business will tell you when you get to a certain point, you need to hold back your growth because it's hard to continue that pace. Yeah. And they kind of hit that ball, and they went a year too far and doubled production again. And then we got into a couple real wet springs, so that got a lot of cash crops in the ground late, and then cover crops just absolutely weren't an option. Yep. And then there was a lot of failures there from people just doing it wrong, bad information. Yep. So just people slinging seed out and then having a bad taste in their mouth and not doing it again.
It's a big learning curve. It's so early in the deal.
Exactly. So they were just. It would be awesome to see where they'd be at today if they could have kept it going. Yeah. Because they were way ahead of the curve as a company. Just needed some different management, you know. But anyways, I think everyone. I'm not saying anything bad about any of them. They all. I think everybody understands it. I've talked with several of those people in that company, and I think they're all just grateful for the opportunity as well. You know, to be where they were when they were there. Yeah. So from there, jumped to another seed company, more regionalized, based out of Iowa. That was a Prairie Creek seed. Yep. Carl and Kyle Delafield. Great. Absolutely great people.
How long were you with Cover Crop Solutions?
So you're going to see a recurring theme.
About 2 years?
It was, but there I didn't have a choice. Like, company went up. I thought I was going to be there forever. I planned on, when I started with them, I was going to retire from there, you know. And I've never been so stressed out in my life over that decision of, because I did leave there, but they'd already let go of most of the company. Yeah. I knew I was only there because I was the last one hired, and like they didn't. I mean, that's what I felt like. I knew it wasn't.
You saw the writing on the wall.
For sure. I mean, they let over half the company go. Yeah. I was still there. I didn't know why I was still there. It made no sense to me. Like, I thought I should have been the first one gone. Yeah. And I was just like, I can't do this. You know, sales manager, everybody's leaving or getting let go. Yeah. And I'm like, do I have to go down with the ship? Like, at what point, you know, you got to watch out for yourself too. So I interviewed a couple different places. I had my distributors, you know, asking me to come work for them while I was still working for Cover Crop Solutions. So you have to do your due diligence, and that's what I did. So I went out, took the job with Prairie Creek, never looked back, and that was a huge stepping stone. Yep. We had they had a system in place, had dealers around Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. They were starting to get a few in the Dakotas, but definitely wanted more of a presence up here. Mm-hmm. I was able to work from home, and I was their, you know, national sales manager, but that title really means nothing. We didn't have a big staff, you know. It was just a title. But we were growing sales and building in that cover crop deal, and you know, I didn't have a passion for seed corn, but they sold a fair amount of seed, or we sold a fair amount of seed corn through there. It was tough to get any of that moved out here because most of theirs was forage based, and we're not in a high forage area. So that was tough, but we were definitely able to grow some cover crop business and build things up. I grew a lot of good relationships.
Yep.
And that, I think I was there for 3 years,
Okay.
and then was able to start Soil RX.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, I said nothing was harder than leaving Cover Crop Solutions, but then maybe leaving those guys at Prairie Creek was tougher, because I mean, I love those guys, and it was a great operation and a family run business, and
Yep.
and things were really, really good. So they, Carl treated me like a son,
Mm-hmm.
So it was tough to leave there, but at the same time, I had been educating myself
Yeah.
on personal growth, business development, things like that. I didn't feel like I was maybe in the right vehicle
Mm-hmm.
for what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go and how I wanted to get there.
Yep.
So I used all those years of experience to develop this consulting company where I was able to help farms, maybe you want to say not make the mistakes other people made, get them to think outside the box, get them to do different things. We really found this 60-inch corn thing and had a lot of people doing that, and still do have a lot of people doing that.
Yep.
We've just helping walking farms through. I mean, half the time was just holding their hands, you know.
When did you start Soil RX?
Legally, it started January 1st of 2018.
Okay.
Is that it?
So you're looking at 3, 18, 19, 20. So this is starting year 4.
Yeah. No, this would be starting year 3.
18.
I only did 2 full years
Okay.
of just that.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah. 18, 19. Wait a minute.
This is the start of 4.
Yeah, you're right. So, we're in 2021
Yeah,
now.
we are in 2021.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too.
Time flies. So anyhow, that's right. That's exactly right. My math was wrong. So
You've had a lot going on in those 4 years.
So a year and a half into Soil RX, as we were helping farms make these transitions, we were also trying to grow bar end cattle company, and think, we bought a meat trailer, and tried to sell meat. Absolutely could work. I would hope more people do it, sell it locally, and whatnot. I wasn't enjoying it.
Yep.
I enjoy the selling quarters and halves and things like that.
Yep.
It was really, as fun as it was, take a grocery sack of steaks to somebody and you walked out with a pocket full of cash.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of those transactions to add up.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I had an opportunity to sell the meat trailer, sold it. So that's a small part of that whole idea. But we were growing bar end cattle company, increasing cow numbers, picking up land, pasture, farmland, not a ton. We still don't, with pasture and crop ground, we're still only and tree ground now, just over 650 acres.
Okay. Because when you broke up the partnership, you were at 25 cows. So how was that?
I did still have. So we broke up the partnership. Actually, took more than that, but I sold a group of cows. But I had one pasture that was 240 acres.
Okay.
And I had I had one other person bring cows because we're supposed to run at least 40 cows in that pasture.
Yeah.
It's not good pasture. As a matter of fact, it's really bad. But lots of trees, sloughs, swamps, whatever. It's right in the Minnesota River Valley here.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're down to that. Now we've grown it up over 600 acres, which saying it now is substantial. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was impossible to ever get any more. And then a lot of it was 15, 20 acres at a time,
Yeah.
And then, last year was big because we could, or really it was 18 and 19. We're adding an 80-acre tree farm, adding another 80-acre pasture, picking up a 100-acre piece of farm ground, you know. So it takes some time of all the little ones, and then you finally get something substantial, you know.
Yeah.
So but with the tree farm, how that came about is we had.
So just going back quickly before we get to the tree farm. So the Soil RX. So how were you getting guys with that? Like, was that just from working with Prairie Creek? You had guys to consult there, or were you going out hitting the road trying to get guys, or how did?
Yeah. So a little bit of both. You know, I was spending a lot of time at different events. You know, which is weird to think of. Haven't been to one in over a year with all this COVID stuff that's going on. But
it'd be fun to get back to that.
It would, yeah. But all these soil health events and all this stuff. So you made all these contacts, you know.
Yep.
And it's funny, we should talk about that, because when I first started Soil RX, I thought I was just going to be a land management company. I had no intent of actually starting it to help farmers. It was more to help landowners train their farmers, or help landowners find farmers who were doing this stuff already.
Okay.
But it wasn't so much to just work with the farmers.
Yep.
Now we've done some of that too. We do. I actually really enjoy the reason why it started was the helping the landowners.
Yep.
There's a lot of I shouldn't call them uneducated. They're probably very educated, but they don't know much about farming. But they own land.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a whole other opportunity. There's a whole group of new landowners coming. There's going to be a great land exchange here over the next 15 to 20 years of a new generation that owns land. And I'm not necessarily saying they're going to buy land, or a lot of them are going to probably inherit the land. It's probably 3 to 4 generations away from when the family farmed it.
Yep.
And they don't really know anything about it. But one thing they are, most likely they're millennials. And most likely they want to make sure that their land is taken care of in a way that's going to help the environment.
Yep.
And do bring some positive things so for the future.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother subject. Yeah. But anyway, so between my contacts through Prairie Creek and Cover Crop Solutions, and being at all these different events, I was presenting a lot on soil health and cover crop stuff at different functions, whether it was a dealer putting together a meeting for 10 people or 100 people or whatever.
Yep.
You know, you were at a couple of those.
Yep.
Or talking at the Midwest Soil Health Summit in front of 300 people, you know. That's kind of where it started, and was able to build off of that. So I remember when I first started trying to lock down clients, I mean, I was running all over the place, you know. The reason we got started in that was I did have somebody that wanted to buy seed from somebody else when I was with Prairie Creek. And this is when I seen it could be an opportunity to help farmers. Was he offered to pay me personally to develop his cover crop blends. But he was going to buy the seed through a different company.
Okay.
And I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
That would have been frowned upon. Wouldn't have been right.
Yeah.
But I did see an opportunity there.
Yeah.
So that between that and then I was on another farm where they were working with NRCS, and they'd put together a blend, and that blend was going to be like $23 an acre or something. And I was like, let me play with that a little bit. And I developed a spreadsheet that we could, or a tool I should call it. It's a fancy spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we were able to do the same cover crop blend that fit the requirements. I actually think worked probably better for what they were trying to accomplish. And it was $11 an acre.
Wow.
So
that's huge right there.
That's huge. So then he's like, hey, you got a business here. This could be a huge business for you. I was like, yeah, I never thought about it that way. So that was kind of how that happened. So we just grew, that first year was working with 35 farms and covering over 35,000 acres, and now because of all the other stuff, we're not, necessarily trying to do things exactly the same with as many people, but still want to make sure if people need help, we want to be able to help them, So anyways, back to, let's see, spring.
So now we're on the tree farm.
Yep.
And you live just down the road.
Yeah, 2 miles from here. Yep.
So now we're to the tree farm.
Yeah, so.
How's a cow guy getting to trees?
No kidding. I ask myself that every day. So the spring of 19. Yep.
So coming up on 2 years.
Coming up on 2 years. The spring of 19. Well, let's start back. Winter of 18-19. We'll call it that. I don't know when it was. Mm-hmm. We were
coming to get your Christmas tree?
No, we had come here to get our Christmas tree.
Yeah.
But we were sitting around with some neighbors around the kitchen table, and somebody mentioned, "Hey, do you hear the Iverson Tree Farm's for sale?" And we all looked at, pulled it up on our phones, and I'll never get that, for a Christmas tree farm. Like we knew nothing about what it entailed, So a few weeks went by, and I drove by it, and
probably many times.
Well, I did drive by it many times, but that particular day, I was like, it was when it got listed, it was too cold, so they couldn't even put a sign in the ground.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm gonna call, just see what happened. So I pull it up online. I couldn't find it anywhere. Couldn't find the link, so I didn't know who had it. Should have known right then and there. It was sold already. But I was like, well, screw it. I'm gonna call the tree farm. Mm-hmm. So I called the number listed, left a message, got a call back from the realtor in a couple hours, and the realtor just told me that they had already accepted an offer, and if anything changed, they would get back with me. That was fine. I didn't care.
Wasn't looking to buy it.
No, I was more wondering why they wanted so much. I always digging. This is part of I had been starting to look into more, acquiring businesses and looking at different things, and so just the curiosity got the best of me. I called, whatever. So that was that. Never talked to Ron Iverson, the owner of the tree farm.
Yep.
Just got a phone call back.
Did you know him at all before that, or?
No, I think we were Facebook friends.
Yeah.
One of them deals, don't know why or how.
Yeah.
But I think, whether he added me or I added him, who knows.
Yeah.
But that's it. Never said a word to him. Then that spring, my neighbor Nick Lisi here, he helps me out a bunch.
So that was 18-19 winter. Now we're into the spring of 19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And Nick calls me and he said, "Hey, no pun intended here, but he's like, hey, the tillable acres at the tree farm are for rent. You're supposed to call Ron Iverson if you're interested in it." And he's like, he had called my father-in-law, and he didn't want, because it was 18 acres, I think, in 2 little small chunks, 9 and whatever. Yeah. So it was actually 7 and 11, I think is what it is. But so he didn't want to farm it, and he told me about it. He said, "I know you're always looking for more little, hay fields or whatever." He said, "Maybe you want to seed that down to hay and whatever." So I was like, "Yeah, perfect." Called him up, said, "Yes, I'll take it." Didn't even ask. I should have been a little more cognizant on some of the stuff, but some of the worst ground. I always joke around on 35,000 acres that I consult for.
Yeah.
Those are the worst. There's one field, the 7-acre field, is the worst 7 acres of the whole piece is that. But anyways, I was just excited to get the opportunity to rent another couple pieces of ground and just adamant that's the only way we're going to grow it is if we take it and we get it. That's the only way we're going to get more. And anyways, so he was gone and I was gone. We had my wife's grandpa had passed away, so we were down at his funeral and came back. There was a bad snowstorm, and we had plans to take the kids somewhere around that time. So I remember we were actually out in we had taken the kids. Somehow we got to the airport. We had to delay the flight. We were taking them to Diggerland out in Maryland or something.
No, never heard of it.
my mother-in-law was just adamant that the boys went to Diggerland.
Okay.
So the kids get to go play in these diggers and run little mini excavators, and it was cool. They loved it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I remember at the hotel signing a lease agreement and faxing it back, or scanning it and sending it back to them, and
Never talking to him.
never had actually met him yet,
Yeah.
and so signed the lease, sent it to him. Looking back at it, both handshake type of people, so that would have been fine, but we couldn't handshake because we hadn't seen each other.
Yeah.
So he's like, just next Saturday morning, he said, I'll be at the tree farm, just come on out. So I went over to the tree farm at, I think it was 7:30, and I had the Ranger on the trailer. My plan was to stop at the tree farm, and then I was going to go fix fence at a pasture somewhere after that. Mm-hmm. And I got home, and it was 12:30, 2 miles away, and my wife's like, it took you 5 hours to rent 18 acres of hay ground, because that was all it was going to be. It was just a hay field, It's like, what would happen over there? And I'm not normally like that. Like, I can't just sit around. Like, I know we're kind of doing that this morning, but normally it's like, gotta go.
Yeah.
And you ever hear about the rub? The rub. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. You want to rub the people you rub against the most. You're going to be the average of them.
Yeah.
The second I met him, I was like, I need a little bit of him to rub off on me. Okay? So Ron was super successful, and one of those guys that, the harder he worked, the more successful he became. Yeah. But grew up here, right up on the hill in Bellevue. I think his dad farmed a little bit. Mm-hmm. But anyways, grew a very, very successful business in the cities. Had a landscape and design build company. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think he told me he had 150 employees when he sold.
Wow.
So this was kind of a hobby for him. This little tree farm, it was kind of his home thing. He'd already sold the company. This was his last deal. He had a place in Montana too that he had, he calls it his retirement home. Mm-hmm. Or calls it a cabin too. I think it's nicer than a cabin, but anyways, he deserves it, So we got to talking, and the first thing he said was, "Why do you want to rent this ground?" He's like, "Why don't you just buy the whole place?" He called about it before, so he remembered.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would I want to buy a tree farm? I said, I know I called about it, but I was more digging, trying to figure out information. I said, why in the world? He's like, well, you know how to run a business. And he said, I can find people that know how to grow trees. But he said, I can teach somebody that knows how to run a business how to grow trees.
Yeah.
He said, you can't teach people how to run a business. He said, you just got to do it. He said, you found a way to do your own business, which is Soil RX. And he said, I know you can do it. Now, he didn't know that my wife also has her own business. Mm-hmm. She has a hair salon, and she's been very successful in that, which when done right is a business, So I went home and told Mel, I said, we're going to buy the tree farm. First thing she says, the Christmas tree farm? And I said, man, this is not just a Christmas tree farm. We thought for years it was the Christmas tree farm.
Yeah.
It says right on the sign, tree farm. It does not say Christmas tree farm. It says tree farm.
Yeah.
And it says below, transplant trees, specializing in windbreaks, and there's also shade trees. There's 5 different types of maples and 5 different types of spruce trees and 5 different types of pines, and I don't know how many different types of firs are out here that were planted. I know how many we're going to start planting, but there's over 10,000 trees on this place, and on 72 acres. So, as a matter of fact, today we're going to do an inventory of what's still here after this last year, because we moved a lot of trees out of here, and we gotta be planting more, so we gotta know where we're at. Transplant a lot of trees. We from 5 to 20 feet evergreens. Shoot, when I first sat down with Ron that first time, I didn't know the difference between a spruce tree and a pine tree.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people do.
No. I couldn't really tell you.
No, I mean, pines, your long needles. Spruce is generally a shorter needled tree. Now looking at them, it's easy.
Yeah.
But before, I had no clue.
Yeah.
Now I can tell the difference between different pines and different spruces, and there's Black Hill spruce and Colorado spruce. I mean, there's Norway spruce.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of spruce trees. There's all kinds of pine trees. I surely didn't know there was. I just thought I knew they transplanted trees off of here. I just assumed they were, when they got too big to cut as a Christmas tree, somebody would transplant them and put in a new windbreak. Well, that's absolutely not the case. It's the other way around. Like, we were actually locking people off of transplant trees this year because we'd rather sell them as transplant trees than Christmas trees. So we had to manage some of the cutting, get people to cut finish cleaning out areas so we could get new stuff planted. And when you explain to them, they're really good about it. They know they want to be able to come here. There's people that have been coming here for 30 years. This was the 30th year for Christmas tree sales.
Wow.
So, as I've kind of came up in this sustainable, regenerative, cover crop, cattle, beef, whatever that we do, I always look at different opportunities. And one thing, my wife had made me on a beautiful October Saturday afternoon go with and take the kids to a pumpkin patch. And that was awful.
You were going to say you were thrilled to go, weren't you?
Yeah, I was just terrified, honestly. And, we got there, it's 25, 30 miles away, which, had recently. It was actually for sale. That's what probably piqued my interest there, is it was for sale. I was like, oh, look at this, something's for sale.
Yeah.
And it was the wrong direction from everything that we do and just didn't make sense. But it was an old apple orchard, and they were just looking to move on. And they had a pumpkin patch, fall festival thing, whatever. And I remember seeing all the people there and seeing all the kids. And it was really, I saw a lot of moms, grandmas, and kids.
Yeah.
Few dads out here. Most likely the dads are either hunting or farming.
Yeah.
So on a really, really not, which I thought I should have been doing too.
On a nice Saturday.
Yeah. So struggled with that one a bit, but anyways, that thought that day never really left my mind either. And knowing where we are in the beautiful, scenic Minnesota River Valley, maybe not as scenic as Lanesboro where you're at, but also scenic in terms of we're surrounded by prairie, farm ground, flat, everything, and all of a sudden you get into this scenic river valley between Granite Falls and Redwood Falls, Minnesota.
Yep.
Or, as I like to say, between Bellevue and Sacred Heart, which nobody knows about those two towns, but that's that we're just down here in this valley, and we lived down here already. When we'd split off from the partnership, we sold our farm place, we rented the place that we're at. We've been trying to buy that since we moved there, but I always thought maybe, hey, we should do this. We're close to the Grandview Valley Winery, which is just right here. It's just a mile across the section.
Yep.
Everybody knows where this is at. Everybody knows where the Iverson Tree Farm is.
Yep.
So when we started looking at, are we going to buy the tree farm? We looked at year's sales and looked at all the books, and thought, okay, what can we add? Because you got to add. You can't just buy a business and keep it the way it was. Yep. We definitely didn't want to take anything away, and so we bought. But no, when we rented the ground, I was like, well, let's plant 7-8 acres of pumpkins. So one of the best things that ever happened was talking to the seed salesman. This is the only seed salesman I've ever had do this. He told me, maybe you want to plant 4 acres of pumpkins instead of 8 if you've never done this before. So
the opposite direction.
Yeah, we had pumpkins everywhere, and we started the fall festival. Would have been fall of 19 then, and we only counted the kids. We had 600 kids here that first fall.
Wow.
And then, so we thought that was a success. Sold a bunch of pumpkins and whatnot. We charged admission for the kids. Didn't charge for the adults. We didn't have food here. We sell pre-made kettle corn, bags of kettle corn. We found all kinds of different things we could market in what we call the market, which is where they kind of the base the Christmas tree sales out of,
Yep.
But that market just sat there the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So
I gotta go back just quickly.
Yeah.
So like that conversation with Ron, like, why don't you just buy it? Like, how did so you thought it was sold.
Yeah.
So like, how did you were here for 5 hours and we kind of just flew through.
Yeah.
I need a little bit more there.
Okay. Yeah. So we walked through the farm. He explained to me, like, hey, it's not a Christmas tree farm. It's a shade tree. We have shade trees. We do transplants. We want to transplant trees, number one, Christmas trees, number two. Mm-hmm. As any somewhat, I'm not just financially driven, but he kind of shared a little bit of what he could of the income possibilities.
Yeah.
I never thought you could do that on that few acres. Mm-hmm. Now you could plant the trees and do all that stuff, but the idea of starting from scratch on a tree farm is a daunting idea. Mm-hmm. I have been, as I've gotten into some of this stuff, wanted to go, how can we do stuff on fewer acres? How can we, we don't all have to farm 10,000 acres.
No, can't.
It's not gonna work. That's why we see fewer and fewer farm sites around. Mm-hmm. We need more people out here. How can we do stuff differently?
Yeah.
That was just one of the avenues, one of the things that we could do. We were talking before we started the podcast a little bit about not following the path that we thought we have to follow.
Yeah.
As a farmer and a cow-calf producer, I thought my way to grow my cow herd was to add more replacement females. Mm-hmm. Now our way to grow the cow herd might have been to buy a tree farm, which is in a way, it's to me, it's, I could take this into church. I don't know. We sat into, I think there was 3 different services in particular, but one in particular that one sermon made me start Soil RX. It just told me I had to do it. Like, quit thinking about it, just do it. Know that God's in charge and making it work. The other was, as we're looking at buying this tree farm, the pastor was talking about his God using and Jesus using his disciples to spread the word. And when there's an opportunity there, and I thought right then and there, I thought, what a better chance to spread the word than a Christmas tree farm. Mm-hmm. Like, remind people why there's Christmas. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how that started. Thinking of all that. But yeah, so back to that conversation with Ron, I started looking at all these different things that I asked him about. What are some of the other things we could do here? And have you thought about this? So I'm going to use some examples. These trees are planted in 10 by 10 or generally at 8 by 8 setting. So every 8 feet there's a tree, and then 8 foot wide rows. Mm-hmm. With grass in between. Yeah. So one thing, trees use a lot of nitrogen, right? Mm-hmm. Why in the world aren't we growing clovers and legumes in between those rows of trees?
Yeah, not grass.
Just not grass that uses nitrogen. Let's use a plant that produces it. So I never thought about it. I don't know why it wouldn't work. So that's one thing that we're going to look at. Mm-hmm. The other thing is
I know where you're going with this.
Livestock.
Yep.
Why aren't we running livestock in between the trees? Now, cows might be tough, doable, but tough.
You're going to manage it, right? But
yep. Especially when we get into the bigger areas of trees where the trees are just 15 to 20 feet tall, and we've already plucked so many of them out, and there's big areas of grass. We should be able to graze that instead of mow it, right?
Yeah.
Tough to hay it. That's a tough situation. I'm just looking at where can we graze more animals. I think from the soil tests we've done and just from the visual tests I've done, the tree farm's dead in terms of soil biology.
Really?
It needs livestock.
Yeah.
It just needs poop.
Yeah.
Urine.
If this is 30 years and it hasn't, yeah.
Yeah, and
Because when you take the trees, I mean, I would assume like you're not just taking the roots, you're taking some soil with it.
Yeah, but
Okay.
almost every time I'm bringing back better soil than what leaves.
All right. Okay.
So there's always a big plug. So we use two different types of spades. There's always, it's either a skid loader spade or a big truck spade.
Mm-hmm.
So the skid loader spade's 44 inches wide. The truck spade is 85 inch stalker spade.
Mm-hmm.
The plug of soil without the tree is 11,000 pounds of soil. So we always keep an empty hole here on the farm unless we're in like when we have our fall fest going on, we try not to have a bunch of open holes randomly so people fall in.
Yeah.
Or Christmas tree season, we definitely don't want, because people drive through the farm.
Yeah.
I don't want them falling into a hole.
Yeah, that won't be good.
So we do try and keep them plugged in, but like this spring when we start moving trees again, we'll open a hole, set it off the soil will go off to the side or whatever. We'll always have one open hole, so that way when we go somewhere to dig a plug, we pull the plug, bring it back, bring them a tree, fill their spot. They didn't even know we went, outside the fact they have a tree there and there's a circle around it.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to be. Doesn't always work just that perfectly, but that's
Gotcha.
the goal. So yeah, we are always bringing in soil, but a lot of times it's off of yards or fence rows or tree lines, whatever. It's not. Has there been manure on some of that ground? Probably at some point in time, but we need to add biological activity. One thing that has always been done on this tree farm is we've used a lot of fungicides, a lot of insecticides, a lot of pesticides, a lot of herbicides.
Yeah.
And I'm not against that stuff when it needs to be used.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather find a way to not have to use it.
Yeah.
For instance, if I could seed a bunch of flowering species to bring in a bunch of pollinating insects or predatory insects so I don't have to use a pesticide, it's a win.
Yeah.
If I can keep the ground covered and keep a lot of the fungus issues in the soil and not have to put a fungicide on the tree, I just save that money and I'm protecting the good fungi in the soil.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We got to get better. There's been a lot of broad applications of stuff, and I think we got to do better if we're going to apply them, to apply them directly to the trees and not to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the best ways to kill mycorrhizal fungi is spray fungicide.
Yeah.
Right? So, now that we know how the soil works and functions, we need to do all that we can to make sure it has the tools to do it properly.
Yeah.
With that being said, I cannot take the chance of losing a bunch of trees to a disease because I didn't do what always works either.
Yeah.
So you got to balance that thing.
Well, it's a progression.
It is.
It's I want to get you can't go from not doing any of that or doing that 100% to nothing. You gotta. It's a gradual. It's a gradual step here.
Yep. Exactly. So, that's kind of where that is. So we got into the fall festival this year. We had over 6,000 people at the farm for the fall fest. We counted all the people. We didn't charge admission for anybody. May have been a huge mistake. We were told that was a huge mistake by many people that came because we had a corn maze, hayride, a 200 round bale maze.
Nice.
We had 9-hole minion, kind of a putt golf for little kids.
Yeah.
We had a 9-hole, what we call pasture golf or redneck golf or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Some of those holes were in that situation. We had one hole that was a big tree spade hole. We had one hole where you had to hit the golf ball into a toilet seat. Nice. Another one, we had 22, I think, small spade holes in a kind of in a circle deal.
Yeah.
And you had to get the ball in the middle. It was a win or lose deal. You either got it in the middle and you won, or you didn't. Yeah. Now, we didn't have anybody babysitting those holes, so it was just a fun way for you to do it. The winery had came over. They were serving their beverages.
Yep.
We had Wurstmachers from Morris, Minnesota come up with their food trailer, and they had smoked brisket and really good food.
Yeah.
Loin sandwiches.
Yeah.
It was just amazing food. We had people come from. I know North Dakota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and South Dakota, along with a lot of Minnesota people.
Yeah.
I don't know why or how or how this all worked. We did a lot of social media marketing, but I mean, I think this whole COVID thing that we're in helped that grow considerably.
I was gonna say, did you have much problems with I mean, you had 6,000 people here, so I mean, you had people here.
We did, but it was all outside.
Yeah.
And we had some really nice weekends. So even the market, we were able to keep the doors open. We got a big garage door on the one end.
Yeah.
That was wide open. My wife was the only one of us that was really inside in the market a lot. And, she had her mask on kind of when she needed to. And we're not big mask wearers. So I don't know. If it needed to be on, I'll just say it was on. But one of those deals. But that was really, we were going to try and do our own food. We weren't sure that 2020 was the year to jump into that.
Yeah.
It was a big learning curve. It was interesting. We weren't sure, we had it all on free will donation.
Yeah.
And in terms of admission, that was a complete failure. In terms of financial failure, direct financial failure. Also say, I asked people that came through as they were coming to get Christmas trees. We had a couple crazy busy weekends here starting Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh, yeah. And it was a great December for you.
It was.
It was super nice weather, so
It was. So I think probably about a third of the people, I always ask if they've been here before, some I know, but we're only 2 years into this is only our second Christmas tree sales.
Yeah.
So some of them you know, some of them you don't. Some people we've had here at every fall festival, maybe multiple times. They always come get their Christmas tree. Last spring, because my wife couldn't go to work at the hair salon, we actually brought in a whole bunch of container stock, shrubs and trees and whatever. She sold them. So we've had people that came to the spring deal for that, come for the fall festival, and come for Christmas trees.
Wow.
So you get to know some of these people. So you don't have to ask the question all the time, but about a third of the time, I asked people if they'd been here before, and they said, yeah, they had, but for the fall festival, not for the Christmas trees. Well, when we bought the place, it was only a Christmas tree, or everybody thought of it as a Christmas tree farm. Well, now it's becoming more of a place to go multiple times a year.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do it. So now we're trying to build the cow herd around.
I was gonna say, how does this come together, and where does it go?
Yeah, because what's the name? Working Cows, is that right? Or what's the name of the podcast?
Let's Talk Beef.
Let's Talk Beef. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll have to edit that one.
Edit
That's
that
all right. You gotta promote other people's podcasts.
That's right.
Too.
That's right. Maybe you can give them a podcast or get it on each other's.
Maybe we'll have to do that.
Can't believe I did that.
Should shut this down right now.
So how do we build those two together? Obviously I don't want to calve when we're busy at the tree farm.
Yeah.
I don't want to breed when we're busy at the tree farm.
Yeah.
We can't market. I used to market. I always used to have a Thanksgiving weekend or the day or the week after Thanksgiving we'd do an online sale. Thanksgiving weekend is our biggest weekend at the tree farm.
That's when it starts.
Yeah, so now we just have to kind of scratch everything and start over.
Yep. Which is good and bad.
It is. It's fun. It's crazy. I way overanalyze things on that, especially something I've lived and breathed my whole life.
Yeah.
I've always been in the seed stock business. Really a struggle as we've changed how we do things on our farm. Because one of the first things I did when we left the partnership and started on our own was I went to summer calving. Or late spring calving, I should call it. I love
May,
when
June.
I love when we say spring calving and when do you start? Well, January. That's not spring,
That's
buddy.
winter.
That is winter. That is the middle of winter. That's the worst part of winter. So I'd always wanted to get to pasture calving cows.
Yep.
And that's what we do. So we calve in May and June, and I remember I used to be embarrassed of the June calves, and now it's like, I don't know, your first calf's born in the first part of May, that June calf doesn't seem so small.
Yeah.
Now, when you start calving in January and you have a June calf, like that thing's a throwaway calf, right? Which just changes how you look at everything, for instance, I was looking at a bred heifer in a sale this spring, and I found one that was due to calve in May. Well, you instantly ask yourself, all the rest of them are due to calve in February and March. Why is this one due to calve in May?
Yeah.
There might be a fertility issue.
Yeah.
Maybe she slipped her calf. Maybe there's not, but you don't know. So I didn't buy her.
How are you willing to take that?
No, I'd rather do the other way around. So I ended up, we bought a bred heifer in a sale in Ohio here.
Well, I'm just saying, are you willing to, if you see that, are you willing to throw your money at that?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Nope, not a chance.
There's something, whether it's good or bad, there's something going on there.
So now on the flip side, there was a heifer. I wasn't even paying attention for some reason to when she was going to calve. She's out in Ohio and bought her, kind of a last minute deal. I really liked how she was bred, but immediately afterwards I realized she's due to calve like February 12th or something. I thought, oh no.
Yep.
What are we going to do? Well, she's going to end up at a buddy's. I told a buddy of mine up in North Dakota, Jungles up there.
Yep.
I told him, I'll trade you. I said, you calve her out, I'll calve a potload of May calvers for you.
Yep.
Knowing full and well you don't have a potload of May calvers. So, but I would have. I'd rather calve another potload of cows in May than one in February.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore the way we do it.
Yeah.
Not saying it's wrong. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We
not
don't.
your system.
We don't feed lactating cows. Period.
Yep.
Simple as that. When the cow needs her most energy, she's getting it by herself, out grazing.
Yep.
We haven't hauled manure in 5 years.
That's music to my ears. Right?
Yeah. So those are, and yes, we do winter cows. Now last year I didn't have to, because last year we were able to graze cows all winter on cover crops, but that was just because there was prevent plant and we were able to plant cover crops that were going to get tall enough to handle snow loads. Doesn't happen every year. Cows are still grazing now. January 4th. They will be, the way the forecast looks, for a couple more weeks. There's plenty of feed out there. Cows are fat. In really good shape.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to come home at some point in time. I felt bad there last week when we had 50-mile-an-hour winds. They could get out of the wind, but they didn't. They just had to go to a different part of that farm. But they're all doing great, So
calves are still on them?
Those we weaned. Last year I left the calves on because of where they were at.
Yep.
So I'm learning that. Like, how do we manage that? You calve in May and June. Well, we used to calve in January, February, and wean in October. You don't want to calve in May and June now and wean in October. That doesn't work. We did wean in mid-November this year, just because of where those cows were going to graze winter cover crops. There wasn't great shelter. I didn't want to see the calves go backwards, although I didn't see it last year, but we had good shelter in those fields.
Yeah.
So it's case by case scenario, I also had another small cover crop field where we could take calves to, so they're grazing covers, but then we just started last week supplementing those calves with some baleage as well. So they have access to kind of a dead cover crop that's whatever. The cow's cover crop, there's a lot of rye in that cover crop, and it's actually very green underneath the snow, and was planted in early August. And there's radishes and turnips and whatever, but and oats and winter rye. They look, they are split up without a doubt. That was one of the coolest things last year, was letting the cows and calves stay together. I think we generally, as an industry, wean calves too early, but it also, you have to look at your resources and what you have, what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
This year's bulls that we're going to market, or because we went to summer calving, as a lot of people have actually gone to.
Yeah.
There's been a surprising amount of people that have gone to May, June calving.
Well, we had some really bad springs there for a while.
We did.
Like 3, 4, 5 years in a row.
So I always, this is my dilemma now, is do we grow these bulls to sell as coming 2-year-olds like I thought we were going to have to do by going to later calving?
Yep.
Or do we just postpone our bull sale? What I mean is, we always, as an industry, start selling bulls after Denver, right?
Yep.
Denver's over, bull sales kind of start. So let's get into late January, February, March, April. Those are your big bull sale months.
Yep.
Well, guess what, guys? There's a lot of people that don't need to breed cows until July or August.
Yep.
Why do we have to have bull sales so early? If a percentage of the industry is going to later calving, do we have to hold those bulls over for another year?
Mm-hmm.
Or can I get those bulls there and sell them in May and have a bull sale in May and June?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's one of my dilemmas now. I'm looking at, okay, we got these coming 2-year-old bulls, and we've been selling them privately again. We haven't done a sale for a few years, but
Yeah.
we're looking at the possibility of increasing those numbers because the quality's good enough,
Mm-hmm.
and put them on a high fiber, high forage diet, feed them good enough, to get to that point. I don't like getting bulls fat, but
Yeah.
we talked about that a little bit, but this morning, but they definitely, everybody says they don't want to buy a fat bull, but try and sell them a skinny one. So
Yeah.
we got to have them in good shape, but I don't want to get them too fat.
Yep.
But so that's my dilemma. Do we just let those bulls grow out till they're 2 and try to market them? You could try to market early in the year if you've got 2-year-olds.
Yep.
Otherwise, you could go real late in the year and sell your calves at yearlings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's just which one do we want to do? That's what I got to look at and see what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
We are focused on commercial cattle, which is hard to believe for a lot of people listening to this, knowing we have shorthorn cattle and we're focused on commercial cattle.
Yep.
We do sell some bulls into other purebred herds, and generally those purebred herds are going to be earlier calvers.
Yep.
So if they're looking at buying a bull, they're probably going to want us to stick at 2-year-olds, because they're going to want to be breeding when ours are just hitting a year.
Yeah.
Otherwise they're going to buy them and hold them for a year.
Not many guys want to do that.
So I don't know. I've always believed that you should market what you have and what fits in your system, and try and find other people. I think people will come if you do things the way you believe in it. You'll find the right people. There's people out there for every system.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, I know people that don't want to buy 2-year-old bulls because they want to buy their bulls to use on heifers for a couple years and then use them on cows. Well, they feel by buying a 2-year-old bull, they miss a year of using them on heifers. Because those bulls, if you didn't use them as a yearling, they just have a chance to get big fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna find people in every situation, and that's probably the biggest thing I've learned is just do it.
Yeah.
Whatever, just decide to do it and do it. Whether it's buy a tree farm or sell, market, breed, whatever.
Yeah.
Graze cover crops. The hardest thing is to go back and forth. And that's when I look, with the cover crop thing, it's gotten to be a challenge of, it can be a challenge. Do you have cover crops to graze this year or not? We're starting to see enough cover crops. I don't always graze my own. We're starting to see enough in the area where there's more farms than there are cows.
Yeah.
So if I can, there's enough farmers starting to realize the value of these diverse cover crops after a small grain, but they don't want to go through the work of having the cows. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a lot of what we've got going on, but I think you wanted to talk about some other ideas too, right?
Well, I Are you doing anything? With the cover crops, I guess the question that comes to my mind is, are you doing anything that's just straight cover crop? Or are you always putting in a small grain or doing 60-inch rows? Or like,
Yeah.
are you just do you have a scenario where you just put cover crops in so you can maybe have a few more cows?
Yeah. On one farm we've done it that of our own. Mm-hmm. I have several producers doing it. Last year, probably was late March, maybe early April, but I think it was late March. We did a mix of, it was oats, wheat, lentils, peas, barley, flax. There's 8 different species. Mm-hmm. Diversity. I'm always a huge fan of diversity.
Yeah.
Those are all, everything was cool season, plants, annuals. Not all bred for forage, but all bring good aspects to a diet.
Yeah.
I'm going to touch on this one thing. We were listening to a speaker last year at the No-Till on the Plains conference, and I forget her name now. But she made the comment that we should ourselves look at our diets and make sure we eat 30 different things every week. Now write that down on paper as you go through that and see if you can hit 30. It's not as easy as you would think,
And that are actually probably good for you.
Yeah, I mean, chocolate, M&M's probably doesn't count.
Yeah.
But beef is going to be one.
Yep.
Pork is going to be one. Chicken's going to be one. And celery is going to be one. And lettuce is going to be one. And kidney beans and potatoes and corn and whatever. They're all going to be one. We found the easiest way to do it is to put a lot of stuff in your eggs in the morning, That makes sense. But we know in our diets that the more diversity you have, every plant uses available nutrients and minerals differently. And those nutrients become available to the cow differently.
Yeah.
So when I hear about a feedlot that's feeding corn and corn distillers mixed with some corn silage and a little bit of corn stalks, it scares the death out of me, because not only can they not figure out what their gut issue is, there's clearly a gut issue there. I could have told you already, but there always is in those situations. Mm-hmm. But what's the quality of the meat?
Yeah.
And then what's our eating quality? Not, does it taste good? I'm not going just off the taste, but is there different nutrients available in that meat versus something that had diversity? And this isn't a grass-fed versus corn-fed thing. This is nutrient. This is nutrient density.
Yeah.
So I look at that when I'm growing my cattle out, and I have something that either I'm going to feed my family or I'm going to market to others to feed their families. I want to make sure that animal had as many opportunities to eat as many different things as possible. So when I'm doing a cover crop mix, I don't like to do any less than 8. We find when you get 8 or 9, you see a lot of these plants start to kind of work together really well, and you can actually increase production. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes if you're doing 2 or 3, you maybe don't get as much as you would have gotten if it was just one by itself, know. Obviously, you're not going to spray this. I'll usually spray a burn down before we do this, but you're not going to spray that mix because there's nothing that can handle grasses and broadleafs and legumes and everything, together. And then what we did, we planted that early. Late June, we actually cut it, baled it, and wrapped it. And that's the baleage that we're feeding back out in those fields where it came from.
Yep.
And then I went back out there again and planted, there I did some 60-inch corn mixed with the corn planter. And actually, I think I did every other row with soybeans.
Okay.
And this is just a trial, It sure would have helped to get some rain there within a couple weeks of planting, because it was dry when we did this.
Yeah.
And then we We also seeded through the drill, it's kind of a broadcast and light drag incorporation type deal. This is a do as I say, not as I do type deal.
Yeah.
But we did sorghum, millet, clovers, some cereal rye, some different oats, radishes, turnips, whatever, all kinds of different stuff.
Yep.
In my situation, I usually am taking all my empty bags and dumping it in and making sure I got enough brassicas, enough grasses, and enough other stuff, you know. I'll sometimes see mixes, 20 to 30 way mixes, you know.
Yeah.
But, so we seeded that and then planted the corn on 60s. And the only reason I wanted the corn out there in the first place was to hold the snow. Nothing holds snow like corn does. Mm-hmm. So that was what we were getting after. And this was going to be a fall grazer. You know, this was the plan.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. We weaned calves on that, and they're grazing that. And now we're starting to feed the spring cover. Because we always have an abundance of feed in June. So we may have to take that some of that while it's still high quality. Now, one thing we should talk about too is equipment-wise. I don't own a hay baler. I don't own a swatter or a hay bine. Mm-hmm. I don't own a rake.
Yeah.
My tractor does pull something from time to time, but I hired my neighbor to custom do my hay. It's funny, the first year I did that, I spent less money paying him to do it than I used to spend on fuel and repairs on my old stuff.
Yep.
It's crazy. And it was 100%.
Nobody would believe that.
No, but we have it on QuickBooks. I can prove it to everybody.
Yeah.
That's not including my time. That was just purely
fuel and maintenance.
It was cheaper to pay somebody else to do it.
That's not even the payments if you didn't own them.
No, and he was able to go buy new equipment because I was willing to pay him.
Yeah.
We both made more money.
Yeah.
Because and I had more time to do other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't love haying anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an easy decision for me to have somebody else do it.
Yeah.
I love getting that stuff. Well, I don't even like feeding hay.
Yeah.
But I also, where I do like feeding hay is on poor pasture. Like, there's not a better way to improve pasture than to feed cows on it. Mm-hmm. Properly.
Yeah.
Keyword. But that can be done wrong and can make a mess just as easy, you know. But winter feeding cows in pasture is an ideal way. So I still need to have some equipment. Still like to do that, but it's a feeding equipment, not that. So, you know, one other thing we did this year is we did chop a little bit of silage. First time in a long time. Mm-hmm. Hate it. Yeah. Absolutely hate it. Yep. Why? Because I got to start a tractor every single day. Yep. We're starting a skid loader, but I mean, I despise it.
Yeah.
The guy that chopped it for me, we were just settling up there year-end stuff, you know, and he's a dairy farmer. Mm-hmm. And I made the comment to him, I said, starting a tractor every day is for the birds. And he laughed, and we were sitting in his office in the kind of kitchen lounge area, mm-hmm. and the barn was just down the hall, and I heard a big loud laugh come from back there, and it was the guy that does chores for the dairy every day.
Yeah.
You know, they're feeding twice, sometimes 3 times a day or whatever. And he's like, well, how do you normally do it? And I said, well, we bale graze. So, like, for the cows, I would generally, I mean, there was a lot of times in the past where I'll set out 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks worth of hay mm-hmm. in a day.
Yep.
On a nice day.
Yeah.
When it's 30. Just take a day, unwrap a whole bunch of hay, and set bales out all over the place. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean I give them access to all.
Yep.
It might be in 6 different paddocks throughout the farm.
Yep.
But I could be gone for 2 weeks and have somebody just come open a gate.
Yeah.
Every now and then, and the cows are fed.
Yep.
Works pretty good. Do we waste some hay? Yeah, but we're fixing ground.
But do you really waste it then?
Not very much.
Yeah.
No, it's not waste to me anymore.
Yeah.
I look at every bale as a bag of fertilizer.
Yeah.
Period. That's just how I look at it. Now, I like to roll them out, or I like to do that when I can, but only when the weather is fitting. If it's going to be cold, I hate starting equipment. So this whole silage thing, I don't know if that's a long-term deal on our operation. So, and that gets into, the raising of the bulls too, you know. Part of me is like, I should just send them to another feedlot or a feed yard or somewhere that starts a tractor every day and has a feed wagon and has access to that. That's what I actually asked the dairy. I said, they chop a lot of cover crops and do a lot of stuff, sorghums and different things.
Yeah.
I said, maybe I could get, like, I don't remember the brand, but there's a feed wagon. It's like an SI feeder type deal.
Okay, yeah.
With the slides inside, and it's actually got a roof on it.
Okay.
You can put a TMR mix in there.
Okay.
And they say it's good for like 4 to 6 days or something like that.
Huh.
And I was thinking, well, maybe if I wanted to have my own bulls at my place, I could just have him mix the feed up, and I could just every 4 to 6 days run that SI or the feeder. It's a trailer deal. Just run that over, have him fill it up, buy the feed from him, and bring it back. Think of it as nutrients for your pasture, because I'm feeding it on pasture.
Yeah.
I'm not. The bull feeding area is a 5-acre pasture.
Yeah.
I'm not, when I feed them hay, like right now, the way they're being fed is they got grass, hay, and they got silage in they're J-bunks. But I just dump it in with a skid loader. It's wrong.
Yeah.
I can't weigh it.
No.
You can't do anything right.
No.
Because that part, it's just tough. If you're gonna be in that business and feeding silage and doing all that stuff, you should know the pounds, and I can't track that because we don't have a way to do it. So I don't like it.
Because now you're wasting.
Now we are wasting, for sure. But the hay, I just move the feeder around the pasture, the hay feeder. Like it's a common sense feeder, 2 bales.
Yep.
They waste a lot too, but it's not waste because I'm on the hilltops all the time. I'm just trying to put more armor on the soil. That's
trampling it in. It's going
for
to,
sure.
It's going to the biology.
Yep. And then as the hay feeder moves, they lay there, and they put more manure there, and you stimulate more biology. It breaks down that manure faster, or the hay faster.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. I didn't have to haul it out. I don't make a mess there.
Nope.
You feed them in the same spot twice, you make a mess.
Yeah.
Once, it's fine. So that's how I do it. I make cows clean the feeders out. There is one group of cows at home on corn stalks, and every now and then I'll throw them a bale of hay, but like yesterday, the bale was gone. If it was real cold, I'd have fed them again, but there's 100 acres of stalks for them to get out on.
Yeah.
So these are the cows that didn't go to the cover crops, because I wanted to have the stuff out there that was an easy number in terms of hauling, so many loads back. And so no rhyme or reason why these are there, but that's just how we look at everything. Is I don't want to start a tractor. I despise spending money on fuel. And
now if you could just run cows down the road, not trailer them, I bet you'd be in heaven.
For sure.
Yeah.
Which, everybody asks me, well, why do you want to farm more ground? So I can put a fence around it, and I can make sure that I have enough ground that's going to be cover cropped every single year, so I can graze them, graze cows in the winter. And in that situation, I can guarantee you I would do more of what you talked about, or what you asked about, is planting your cover crops and using them as a full season forage type situation. There's all kinds of numbers and data of people doing that and making that work better because they don't need the equipment on very good farm ground.
Yeah. I'm sure you get a crazy look when you taking $200 some rent ground and putting just cover crops up.
Yes, but it's also more productive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're just growing more feed on it. So it's not like you can't compare $200 an acre cash rent ground to $25 an acre cash rent ground pasture ground. It's not the same.
No.
In all actuality, I've seen the
reverse too of like corn versus the cover crops. Like your inputs are completely like
really the only reason you want to be in corn is for the payment, like the
subsidies.
subsidies. Yep, for any of that kind of stuff, and maybe they're not always a direct payment, but sometimes it is. So that's where you lose. There is an incentive to not do the right thing in terms of cover crops, alternative forages, whatever, because you lose out on all those programs. Now, is there program money for cover crops? Yes, but it's minor in comparison to what?
Because it's so new.
Yep.
They don't know they don't have it figured out.
Yep. I mean, the best thing that could, if you wanted to play that game, if there was a system like the old set aside program where you should get paid extra to plant a cover crop instead of a corn or soybean, or a cash crop, I should call it, and graze it, because you're just benefiting the land, and you're benefiting the water quality, and you're benefiting all the stuff that is an issue, you know. So, and look at all the money they're spending on all those other things, you know, where we could just stop it with the cover crop. Now, I'm a big fan of tying the cover crops in with the cash crop. I think it'd be a great rotational piece. The thing is what I see happen a lot of times is we do the same field and the same thing because it's close to the farm.
Yep.
Well, you know, that's where
you lose the
benefit.
Hybrid vigor, if you want to use the Cal term.
Yep.
If you do it on the same field every
time. Yep. I will say this, like, it's hard to beat planting corn into a grazed cover crop, or beans for that matter too, either one. It's not the cover crop, it's what was in the cover crop and how was it managed, you know. If it's a big high carbon type cover crop, you know, your high grasses and whatnot, you're way better off to go to beans. And if you're going to corn, we just do more brassicas and legumes. It's really not that hard, you know, to make it work. To get a yield impact. Positive
You're having
impact.
big success with like 60-inch row corn.
Yeah, that's really been generating a lot of steam. It's funny, you get some farms that do it once and they'll say, you know, I'm never doing it again. We have other farms that say, well, I've done it now and I'm not going to try it for a while. I'm going to let other people figure it out. And then I have the ones that like did everything right, and they're like, we're going all 60-inch. You know, so now I've had guys that did all 60-inch last year and aren't going to do it again. So it doesn't fit every situation. You do have to look at some of the things you have on your equipment. Like, I can't just take my old John Deere 7000 and plant 60-inch corn and expect to get 200 bushel corn. Like, you got to have V-drive on your planter. You really need to have delta or some sort of downforce to make sure. Seed placement's always crucial when planting any crop, but planting corn
in that high
population. So to clarify, there may be a lot of listeners here that don't know what 60-inch corn really is. We are planting the same amount of seeds per acre. We're just doubling the population and shutting off every other row. So if we're in a 30,000 population, we're actually setting the planter to plant at 60,000. So you may have a plant every 3 inches instead of 6 in a 30-inch row. So,
and this allows you to have wider rows so you can have more sunlight to get that cover crop in.
Yep. And I think there's all kinds of different benefits. It all started, that's not how 60-inch corn did not start for the cover crop. The reason Bob Recker started the 60-inch corn thing was to generate sun flow capacity to the corn plant. And the only reason, when he retired from John Deere, he wanted to try and find something to put his name in agriculture. So he studied how can we, he's like, if I can come up with something that could increase corn yields by 7 or 8%, I think is what he was shooting for, you know. It's a pretty good number. What could that be? Well, as he was doing all these studies and all these plots, the seed salesman or whoever he was with would always say, don't look at the ears on the outside however many rows, because they're not right, because they get more sunlight. Because if you ever look, your biggest ears are going to be on the edge of the field. Well, his idea with 60-inch corn was, how can we emulate that throughout the entire field? So it wasn't until the cover crop world got a hold of it that said, hey, we can make this work. Now, funny thing is, he was really struggling with weeds on 60-inch corn.
Makes sense.
But once he came up with the right cover crops, the weeds weren't an issue anymore.
Yep.
So it's not dialed down to a science yet. We still have some stuff to figure out, but it sure helps if you can get your nutrients applied in or near the row.
Mm-hmm.
We can grow a tremendous amount of forage in between those rows. Getting the cover crop, that gives us more options and opportunities and ways to get the cover crop planted. Finding the right cover for the right situation, is which every situation is different. I don't do the same cover crop mix for two different farms.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely do I use the same thing for two different farms.
Yeah.
It completely depends on your environment, your location, your rainfall, it all what your goal is. Are you trying to use it for grazing? You and I would be trying to extend our grazing, with 60-inch corn.
So you have guys combining and you have guys not combining and grazing the corn?
Yeah, so that's been more on the experimental side, but that's probably where I think you could have the biggest benefit, is grazing the 60-inch corn. And I don't have all my numbers with me.
Benefits in the fact that you can do more cattle?
A lot more cattle.
A lot more cattle.
Yeah. And
so what do you think you could...
So to me, it's all about net dollars per acre, right? And if we can grow the corn, maybe...
Then if you're grazing it, you don't have to buy the expensive corn.
That's right.
You can find the cheaper, quote-unquote cheaper stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
You can shop around.
Absolutely. To me, where I think the big opportunity there is say it was soybeans the year before, you're going to corn.
Yeah.
And this particular piece you want to graze, right? So take the soybeans off, plant it to rye. Because whether you graze the rye or harvest it or whatever, or graze it or harvest it as a forage, you have that opportunity. Come in then, because you don't need corn to dry down. The reason we plant corn in April is so we can get it drier. We can still grow very high yielding corn early June. It's just not always
season grass.
Exactly. It's just not always going to be as dry.
Yeah.
So, but still go after the tonnage, go after the feed.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about the dryness of it. Or the dry matter. So take that rye, like I say, either graze it out, chop it, bale it, whatever fits your program.
Yeah.
Plant that corn, and then come in and plant your covers, or maybe you're doing it almost at the same time. We like to plant the...
How fast do you plant corn and then the covers?
I've had people do it within a few days of each other. I like to make sure that the corn...
What's the maximum? There's probably more of a maximum.
Yeah. So a lot of people will go up to wait till V6 to plant the covers.
Okay.
You really got to depend on what's the weed control prior to that, because you don't want to go into a bunch of issues there. You don't... most of the herbicides are going to have a little bit of residual if you're using a herbicide there.
So are they drilling at V6?
Yep.
Straight with the drill?
Some people are using a regular drill. A lot of times we are taking out some of the row units or doing something like that. I don't want to damage the corn if we don't have to, but it's amazing just a plain old press drill doesn't do all that much damage to the corn at that stage.
Okay.
At that stage, if you're going to use just a drill and not some sort of interseeder, or at least something that's got some units taken off earlier.
Yeah.
The shorter the corn is, the less you're going to damage it.
Yeah.
I want the corn has to be ahead of the cover crop. We plant it at the same time. The corn never puts on an ear even.
It never gets ahead.
Never gets ahead. You could make an argument, just get it popping out of the ground and come out and lightly drill it in, Do you even need to drill it? Maybe you don't need to, maybe you can blow the seed down. There's all sorts of ways we can get seed on the ground. But especially when you're doing it, in that time, early to mid-June, we tend to get a fair amount of moisture that time of year still. Through most of the corn belt. And I don't have the dollars and cents of the grazing days. I can tell you that a lot of the people that we've done the trials on, we were getting enough, at least with $3.50 corn. And I think we were comparing it to like if it was costing you $1.50 a day to feed the cows. It was more profitable with the cows than it was combining it. But you had to strip graze it.
Yeah.
Sounds terrible to do in the middle of the winter, but with a cordless drill and some posts, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to see some tremendous weight gains. On the cows, I think a big opportunity there is cull cows. You know, buy cull cows, feed them or graze cull cows in these fields in the fall, and sell the cull cows and go to Texas for the winter.
There you go. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we look into cows in northern climates, now we know we can do it and we can make it work. But when you look into cows in northern climates, I think we should look at opportunities that are given to us and run with them. I've got one client that grazes their cover crops, and then or they buy cull cows every fall now and put cows out on their cover crops and graze them, and then they start feeding them out there, and then they ship them. And now they're feeding cows in the winter, you know, but they're like, they'll start bringing cows in mid-October, and usually about the first of the year, cows start to leave, you know, and they use the Norwegian concrete, as I like to call it, or frozen ground in the winter, and then by the time it gets muddy, cows are gone. But they took all that feed that they produced. They even chop silage and do some earlage and whatever to feed those cows back out there. So their goal is to never have anything leaving their farm that's not animal protein. They're not doing it through any other system or any direct marketing, anything. They're literally just trying to keep as many of the nutrients on the farm as possible.
Yeah.
So they're trying to walk, you know, the old walk the corn to town.
Yeah.
They're doing it with cull cows in the fall and winter, and that fits their system really well. That's what they want to do, you know. So that's one opportunity. We talked briefly last night about a neighbor I had growing up that had the pasture, and he would go out and buy these cull cows in late May, early June, that just hadn't calved yet. A lot of people calve until they got enough pairs to fill their pasture, and then the rest of the cows go to town. You can usually buy those cows pretty cheap, and you know he'd run them on his little pasture there at home and calve them out. And usually that open cow he never breed them. The open cow in the fall would sell for pretty similar to what he paid for that cow originally, and then he had the calf to pay for the ground, and you know. He made more money in those years. It was funny, one thing we didn't talk about, I was thinking about, he later got into purebred cattle because he wanted to get in the purebred cattle business because he thought that was so glamorous and glorious. And now he's back to doing what he did before because he was making way more money, you know, just buying those cows and having them for the summer.
Yep.
And then selling them. And I think the key to how he did it was an all-in, all-out type situation where he didn't wean the calves. He didn't do anything. He just brought the calves back. They split them right there at the sale.
So he was selling them as bull calf pairs or heifer pairs. Like he wasn't.
Yeah, he might have banded them or cut them, but I mean, yeah, he didn't. He was selling those pairs. They'd get split at the sale because the calves were old enough. Generally, if those calves are 300-400 pounds or more, they're going to get split off the cow. Yeah. And I mean, we found that those light calves generally bring, they'll bring more per pound, right?
They do.
And dollars per head, it's really not off all that.
They don't got anything in them but grass.
Nothing.
Fine.
They never fed, no grain, no nothing, just
mineral.
Yep, mineral and grass. And in his situation, that ground was farm ground. I mean, he never had to plant. He planted it once, and then he'd bounce it around, to a couple different pieces around his place. Yeah. So he'd grow it for 4 or 5 years and then come back to corn there, and he'd add, while there's always,
new pasture.
He'd make a new pasture. And that's the intriguing thing to me, and I think the one thing I really want to look at is how can we do perennials and annuals at the same time? Because what if we had a perennial cover crop? Mm-hmm. So you didn't have to keep planting.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
In my my hatred for equipment and running it, I'm okay with trying to plant stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like harvesting it. I like grazing it. But like planting covers is always a challenge. Well, what if it was just always there?
Yeah.
What if we could just set back the perennial enough to get that annual to come up? And maybe it's corn one year and pasture the next. And maybe it's 60-inch corn and you move over 30 inches. So it's actually a 4-year rotation between corn in those spots, Yeah. Just different things to look at. Your cover's already there, so you got the armor on the soil. You're not losing it to erosion. You're not messing with a lot of the stuff. And I think it might be as simple as putting a band sprayer on the planter. So when you're planting your corn, the year that it's corn, maybe you're just doing a strip of Roundup or something. I know there's people that don't like Roundup, but it's easy still. So pushing, using that to band spray where you're planting the corn.
Yeah.
Say right over the closing wheels. And now you've got this little 6-inch strip that is dying off as the corn's coming up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's not going to work. I'd love to try it.
Yeah.
It's one thing I keep thinking about trying, but
yeah, that's good. I like that idea. Be fun to see where that goes.
Yeah. So that's part of the trial and error thing that I like to try some of the real crazy stuff first. I haven't tried that one yet, but I know a lot of people working at tying perennials with annuals.
Yeah.
And then does it qualify? Maybe you're still qualifying for your subsidies then and for your programs, which we need to get away from that anyway. It's like we should eliminate it all. That's the only reason a lot of the stuff happens is because of those programs.
Yeah. So just kind of wrapping up here, since we've been talking for a while, I guess what is, as a now, diversified, however you want to say it, you're a diversified beef producer. You got trees, so I guess what do you see the future of the beef industry as a whole? Kind of where do you see that? And then what do you see as the challenges we're facing? Since I've started the podcast, we've gone through a bunch. When I started, we were talking about the Beyond Burger or whatever, the grass-made beef or however you want to state that, and then it's even
plant-based beef.
Plant-based beef.
There we go.
Yep. So it's just progress. So what are those challenges that we're facing now in just the 18 months, 2 years of this going on, and what opportunities? We already talked about cull cows, but are there any other opportunities you see in the?
Well, yeah. So one thing that's gained a lot of interest over the last 9 months since COVID hit was direct marketing. Mm-hmm. Quarters, halves, burger, whatever.
Yep.
Where's the opportunity? Probably in processing.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough processors out there.
Nope.
In November, I was fortunate last year in Christmas, so Christmas of 19. I lined up some appointments for spring. No, more than I've ever done in the past, but I knew I was going to have some ready. And I got the last one for those spring appointments in November because it kept getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And meanwhile, back in the spring, I'd scheduled some appointments for late fall. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even got those in yet, even though they were scheduled. And now we're into January, past fall, So, and it's not as easy as calling a different place because I've been working with these guys for a while.
Yeah.
Everybody's busy.
Yeah.
So to me, there's a wide open opportunity there. And I don't know if it matters where you're at. Like, I think people will travel to a good, local type processing place. I think that's a good opportunity. People want to know where their food's coming from. I don't see that going backwards at all.
No.
Now, we got out of the direct marketing, like one package of steaks at a time, USDA graded, whatever.
Yep.
I think there's some very good opportunities there for burger, just a burger business. But anyways, that's one. I'm going to say this, if everyone else is doing it, it's probably wrong. So if we always think about that, that's probably not the most profitable way to do it just because everybody else is doing it. So don't be afraid to try something different. If you think it's crazy, it's probably maybe going to work.
Yeah.
In the beef deal, I mean, the opportunities, we talked about the cull cows. I think that's an opportunity. I think grazing other people's cattle makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of people out there that want to have cows, especially a lot of the purebred breeders that just want to own the cow. It's romantic to own cows, right? Being a cowboy.
Yeah.
So, but they never have enough grass.
Yep.
And oftentimes willing to pay for it, so custom grazing, as we've seen pasture management, regenerative type, holistic type planning and grazing and that kind of stuff works, period. Doesn't matter what type of land it is. The more you work at the grazing, the better the grazing is. Yep. So there's room for that to be a full-time job. If you want a job, so that's I think is always going to be big. Or grazing stock or cattle. We talked a little bit about putting in embryos in your own cows for other people. That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that's always been there, but a lot of people don't know it.
Yeah.
That in terms of just the different stuff, I don't know. I just when different opportunities arise, be willing to do something that you're not used to doing. I got to think there's a lot of cattle people out there right now that I mean, for every area. How am I trying to say this? We're in an area here where everybody wants to grow corn, soybeans, and sugar beets. Well, it's hard to get in here. But I also can tell you that through this river bottom, there's a lot of ground that's not being used for anything. And if it could be somehow cleared out, there is grass in between all those trees and the buckthorn and all the other stuff. Maybe you got to fence it real good, put goats in it for a few years, and create a cattle pasture. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe custom goat grazing is a business in the beef industry to improve pastures for. I mean, there's so many things. That's one thing I keep thinking about.
I've been thinking about goats a lot lately.
Yeah, I mean, they make a lot of sense. So be prepared for every goat joke in the world to come. But what do they say out west? They have sheep for profit and cows for pride. So that's, I guess, I know there's several people that just swear up and down the smaller the animal, the more efficient. I mean, I've seen data to prove that. So there might, even though it doesn't look like a beef cow.
Yeah.
That's definitely an opportunity.
Your checkbook doesn't know that.
No, that's right. Just put cows on the memo; it'll be fine.
Yep.
So I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. They just may not all look like black cows.
Like you said, it's not the path to getting there might not look the way you thought it did.
That's right. Yeah, I would have never guessed. I would have started a consulting business to own a tree farm to increase my cow numbers.
Yeah.
But that's what we're going to go. And maybe we don't necessarily increase the cow numbers. We just make sure they're better. And we can market what we have to the fullest extent. But the thing about it, I don't want to sell anything at the sale barn. Nothing against sale barns or sale barn owners or anything like that. I just want to market as many things to whoever's going to use it. So whether it's a herd bull, for somebody, or whether it's a bred heifer or a cow, or whether it's a quarter of beef, but all those people coming out of the tree farm, not only do I get to try to sell them a quarter of beef or something like that, but I can also educate them about beef and agriculture in general. And to me, the better we can do as a community to educate, and I don't know, we've always taken the stand that we can educate on everything. You know, just because it's not the way we do it doesn't mean it's wrong. So we, you know, whether you're talking conventionally produced anything, organic, or grass-fed, or all natural, or confinement, whatever, they're not. None of them are wrong. Maybe we'd all have different ways we'd tweak each one. You know, but there's room for everybody, and everybody wants something different. So let's provide what they want, and then let's educate about all the good things that we're doing too. You know. So we've sold a lot of quarters of beef because we graze cows on cover crops. Even though that beef isn't getting cover crops, people feel like they're making a difference because they're helping somebody that's doing something good for the environment. You know?
I mean, I saw you have a water quality sign out there on the tree farm.
We do. We do. We are a certified clean water farm for the state of Minnesota.
Was that, Iverson didn't have that?
No,
you brought that.
We brought that.
So, I mean, that's bringing two different genres together.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's
right.
And I'm sure people like to see that sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we want to be clean water farms. You know, we want to. I've never heard a farmer say he doesn't want clean water.
Yeah.
They just don't all know the avenue to get there, you know. So, but yeah, that's definitely advertising that. They all work hand in hand. We're going to get people to come buy Christmas trees because of that sign.
Yeah.
We're going to transplant trees somewhere because of that sign.
Yeah.
You know, the guy Ron, the guy we bought it from, knows a tremendous amount about trees. Like we talked about on the clover or the legumes growing in between the rows. One thing he always did every spring was run a disc across the whole farm and level all the where we transplanted it, or where they transplanted everything, or where they pulled out every spring we got to go pull the roots out or the stumps out from the Christmas trees that were cut down.
Yeah.
You pull all them out. Like last year, I just took the skid loader and back drug them all.
Yeah.
And then went around to the cedar and seeded grasses or cover crops or whatever. Found a deal on a bunch of low germ grass seed. Just spread it out because I want it to green up. I'd rather mow it or do something, preferably graze it.
Yeah.
But think if we can go from keeping it black to keeping it green, and then not only mowing it but grazing it, it's a benefit all the way around. You know, so that's what we're all about.
Well, that's got a lot going on and more ideas that you can deal with.
Yeah.
So, but this we've been talking for a while. So, but I appreciate it. It's been a good talk. And we'll do it again in the future.
All right, sounds good. You're welcome back anytime.
Let's go look at some cows.
All right, thank you.
So that was Cody Nelson of Bar End Cattle. And I just want to say thanks to Cody for taking the time out of his day to sit down and talk with me on the podcast. Really enjoyed it, had a great time, and I hope you did too. And also I want to thank B&L Ag again, Brent Krause of Clear Lake, South Dakota, for being the sponsor this week on the podcast. So if you get a chance and need some cover crops or something like that, corn or soybeans, give Brent a call. And if you get a chance, I really appreciate it if you could share this, like this, give me a 5-star review on Facebook, Instagram, anything like that. So thanks a lot for listening, you guys. Really do appreciate it, and can't wait to get the next one out here in a couple weeks. So have a great night, and see you later. Thanks.